He smashed a $6,500 cake into my face in front of 250 guests and called me a broke old fool. What Preston Whitmore III didn't know was that I owned the building we were standing in. Actually, I owned 17 other properties across Atlanta, but we'll get to that. My name is Darius Washington. I'm 67 years old, and I've been working building maintenance for 41 years. Well, that's what everyone assumes. The truth runs deeper than that, but let me start from where it began. I came up in Atlanta in the 1970s. Born in a shotgun house in the old Fourth Ward, back when Martin Luther King's legacy was still fresh in the streets and the city was rebuilding itself. My mama cleaned houses in Buckhead. My daddy worked construction when the work came, which wasn't often enough. I was the oldest of 5 kids, and I learned early that if you wanted something in this life, you had to work twice as hard as the next man and keep your mouth shut about it. Dropped out of Georgia State in 1979 to take a maintenance job at a downtown office tower. 23 years old, making $6.50 an hour, mopping floors and fixing toilets while my friends were finishing degrees and talking big dreams. But I had a different kind of education in mind. I watched. I learned. I noticed which businesses failed, which ones thrived, how much rent they paid, who owned what. I saw the patterns that nobody else was looking for because they were too busy looking down on the help. Those first years were lean. I slept on my cousin Ray's couch in East Point to save rent money. Ate grits and eggs for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Sent what little I could back to Mama to help with my younger siblings. But I was building something, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. By 1991, I'd saved enough for a down payment on a small apartment building in College Park. Nothing fancy. 6 units, half of them needing work. The bank officer actually laughed when I walked in wearing my work uniform. "You want to borrow $280,000? He said, not even trying to hide his smirk. I showed him my books. 12 years of saving. Every penny accounted for. He stopped smiling. I never stopped working maintenance. Even as my portfolio grew, even as the properties multiplied, I kept showing up in that uniform. Kept driving my pickup truck. Kept living in a modest 2-bedroom condo that I owned, but nobody knew I owned. People started calling me the maintenance man who bought half of Atlanta behind my back. I liked that. It kept me humble. It kept me connected to where I came from, to who my mama raised me to be. My wife Vanessa left in 2014, said she was tired of living small when we had millions sitting in investment accounts. She wanted the big house in Buckhead, the luxury cars, the country club life. I told her that wasn't who I was. She moved to Miami with some real estate developer she'd met at a conference. We share custody of our daughter Naomi, though Vanessa's version of custody means a phone call on Thanksgiving and a check at Christmas. Naomi is my heart. She's 28 now, teaches 4th grade at a public school in Southwest Atlanta. Smart as they come, kind like her grandmother, stubborn as a Georgia summer. She grew up knowing we had money, but not how much. I wanted her to understand the value of work, of earning your own way, of not being impressed by flash and pretense. I wanted her to marry someone who loved her, not what she might inherit someday. Not the portfolio she didn't even know existed. Then she met Preston Whitmore. It was a Saturday morning in April when Naomi brought him to my condo for the first time. I live in a quiet building in Midtown. 2 bedrooms, nothing special. I answered the door in my usual weekend outfit, faded Falcons jersey, basketball shorts, house shoes. Preston was tall, light-skinned, dressed in what I later learned was a $2,800 suit. He had that confidence that comes from old money, or at least from convincing everyone you have old money. "Mr. Washington," he said, extending his hand with a smile that showed too many teeth. Preston Whitmore. It's an honor to meet you, sir. Naomi's told me so much about you. I shook his hand. His grip was firm. Too firm. The kind of handshake that's trying to prove something. Call me Darius, I said. Come on in. We sat in my small living room. Naomi made sweet tea, the way her grandmother taught her, with just enough sugar to make your teeth hurt. Preston looked around with barely concealed surprise. I watched him taking inventory. The second-hand sectional. The old flat screen. The framed prints from the flea market. So, Darius, he said, settling back like he owned the place. Naomi tells me you work in property maintenance. That's solid work. Honest work. Been doing it most of my life, I said. Buildings downtown. That's admirable, Preston said, but his tone said something else. His eyes said something else entirely. My grandfather started as a porter, actually. Built Whitmore and Associates from nothing. You know, pulling yourself up, making something of yourself. What's Whitmore and Associates? I asked, though I already knew. Investment firm. We manage portfolios for Atlanta families. Old money, new money. Growing wealth. Third generation now. He said it like he was used to people being impressed. Banking, I said. His smile tightened. Wealth management. After Naomi left the room to grab some photo albums from her old bedroom, Preston leaned forward. His voice dropped. So, Darius, man to man, what's your situation looking like? Financially, I mean. He spread his hands like he was trying to be delicate. I just want to make sure Naomi's going to be taken care of. You understand? There it was. The real question. I'd been waiting for it since he walked through the door. We get by, I said carefully. Naomi's got her teacher salary. I've got my pension coming eventually. He nodded slowly. Right. Good. Because I'm going to be honest with you, Darius. The Whitmore family has certain expectations. About lifestyle, about how we present ourselves. I want to make sure that's not going to be an issue down the line. I wanted to ask what he meant by issue. I didn't. I already knew. My daughter came back with the photo albums, and we talked about other things, vacations she wanted to take. Restaurants they tried, his job at the firm. When they left, I stood at my window and watched Preston's BMW pull out of the parking lot. Leased. I could tell by the temporary tags. I called my son Malcolm that night. He lives in Oakland, works in tech, visits maybe once a year if I'm lucky. We're not as close as Naomi and I are, but he's a good man. Takes after his mother in some ways. Takes after me in others. Dad, he said when he picked up, it's past midnight here. I forgot about the time difference again, I said. Sorry, son, what's wrong? I told him about Preston, about the questions, about the way he'd looked at my apartment like it personally offended him. Malcolm sighed. Dad, you need to tell Naomi the truth before this goes too far. I want her to choose him for the right reasons, I said. And if she's choosing him for the wrong ones, she needs to learn that lesson herself. I'm not going to interfere. I'm just going to watch and be there when it falls apart. The engagement happened fast. 2 months later, Preston proposed at some overpriced rooftop restaurant in Buckhead. 4-carat diamond ring. I found out later he'd financed it at 18% interest. Naomi called me at midnight, crying happy tears. Daddy, he proposed. We're getting married. That's wonderful, baby girl, I said, and I meant it. I wanted her happy. Even if I had doubts about Preston. Even if something in my gut told me this man wasn't who he claimed to be. We're thinking small, she said. Just close family and friends. Maybe rent a nice restaurant. Keep it simple. Whatever makes you happy, I said. Daddy, would you walk me down the aisle? I had to clear my throat. Had to blink hard. Nothing in this world would make me prouder. 3 weeks later, Naomi came to my condo alone. Sunday afternoon. Still in her pajamas. She looked exhausted. "Daddy, can we talk?" We sat on the sectional. I made more tea. She wrapped both hands around the mug, like she was trying to draw warmth from it. "Preston wants a bigger wedding," she said quietly. "How big?" 250 people. His family. His business contacts. His fraternity brothers from Morehouse. She stared into the tea. "He's already making lists." I waited, and he found a venue. The Magnolia Grand downtown. She looked up at me. "Daddy," I looked it up. "It's beautiful, but it's expensive." She nodded. "The venue alone is $45,000. Then there's catering, flowers, photography, the band. Preston's talking about a custom cake from some celebrity baker. Flying in his line brothers from DC Open Bar. Top shelf everything. How much total?" He estimated. $300,000. I didn't flinch. Didn't blink. $300,000 was pocket change to me. But it wasn't about the money. It never is. "What do you want, Naomi?" I wanted small. I wanted your backyard. I wanted a cookout and string lights and line dancing on the grass. She started crying. "But Preston says that's embarrassing. He says his family has standards. That we need to make a statement." "A statement about what?" "About who we are. About our status in the community." I put my arm around her. "Baby girl, you're a school teacher. You drive a Honda. You live in a 1-bedroom in East Point. That's who you are. There's no shame in that." "I know. But Preston says once we're married, things will be different. He says his family's connections will help me." "Help us." She wiped her eyes. "He's talking about getting me a position at a private school. Doubling my salary. Do you want to teach at a private school?" She shook her head hard. "I love my kids. My public school babies. They need teachers who care. Teachers who look like them. Teachers who understand where they come from." "Then tell him that, Daddy." She looked at me with those eyes that could still make me do anything. "Would you help with the wedding? I know $300,000 is crazy. I know you don't have that kind of money. But maybe we could do half? I have some savings, and if you could just... I'll pay for it," I said. Her eyes went wide. "Daddy, no. That's your pension. Your retirement." "I'll pay for it," I repeated. "All of it. The full $300,000. But you're my daughter, Naomi. You're my heart. You only get married once." I held her face in my hands. "If this is what you want, if Preston is who you want, then I'll make it happen. No questions asked." She hugged me and cried into my shoulder. I held her and wondered if I was enabling the biggest mistake of her life. But sometimes love means letting people make their own choices, even when you know those choices might break them. The next 3 months were brutal. Preston took over everything. Didn't ask for my input. Barely asked for Naomi's input. He made decisions and sent me invoices. The venue, $45,000, plus another $12,000 for premium setup. The catering, $78,000 for a 6-course dinner with wine pairings. The flowers, $28,000 for imported orchids and roses. The band, $18,000 for some group his frat brother recommended. The dress, Naomi wanted something simple from a boutique in Little 5 Points. Preston insisted on a designer gown. $14,000. The cake, custom design from a celebrity baker Preston followed on Instagram. $6,500. Every week, a new email. "Hi, Darice. Just confirming payment for..." Another $8,000. Another $15,000. Another $22,000. I paid without complaint. Transferred money from accounts Preston didn't know existed. He never asked where it came from. Never questioned how a maintenance man had $300,000 sitting around. He was too focused on planning his perfect day. His statement. His proof to the world that he'd made it. I met Preston's parents once. Dinner at their house in Buckhead. Big colonial with columns, though I noticed the paint was peeling and the lawn needed serious work. Preston's father, Richard Whitmore, too, was a tall man with graying temples and an expression like he'd just stepped in something. "Darius," he said, barely gripping my hand. "Preston tells us you're in the service industry." "Property maintenance," I said. "Buildings downtown." "How?" "Practical." He said it the way you'd say unfortunate. His wife Claudia was all Botox and pearls, her smile frozen in place. She looked me up and down, taking in my khakis and buttoned down from Kohl's. "Well," she said, "at least Naomi comes from humble beginnings. She appreciate what the Whitmore name can provide." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Naomi squeezed my hand under the table. Richard poured wine. "Expensive bottle." I noticed his hand shook slightly. "Preston tells us you're covering the wedding costs," he said. "That's generous of you, Darius." "Of course," Claudia added quickly. "The Whitmore family would typically handle such things. But given your circumstances." "What circumstances?" I asked evenly. "Well," Richard cleared his throat, "your situation. We understand Naomi's mother isn't in the picture. You're doing your best on a limited income." He smiled like he was being kind. "It's admirable, really." Claudia leaned forward. "Darius, Richard and I were thinking. After the wedding, it might be wise to discuss living arrangements. For you," she smiled that frozen smile, "there are some lovely senior communities nearby. Very affordable. We'd hate for you to be a burden on the young couple as you get older." Naomi dropped her fork. It clattered against her plate. "Excuse me?" Her voice was ice. "Oh, sweetie." Claudia reached for her hand. "We're just thinking ahead. Your father's getting older. He probably can't work much longer. We want to make sure everyone's taken care of properly." I stood up. "Naomi, we're leaving." "Darius," Richard started. "Now." We left. Richard called after us about dessert and coffee. I didn't look back. In the car, Naomi was shaking. "Daddy, I'm so sorry." I didn't know they were going to say that. "It's not your fault, baby girl. They're horrible. They're Preston's family, and they're horrible." I drove in silence for a while. Finally, she spoke again, quieter this time. "Daddy, do you think I'm making a mistake?" I wanted to say yes. Wanted to tell her to run as fast as she could. But she was 28 years old. She had to make her own choices, her own mistakes. "I think you need to decide what kind of life you want," I said carefully, "and what kind of man you want to build it with." She didn't answer, just stared out the window as Atlanta's lights blurred past us. The wedding day arrived on a Saturday in July. Perfect Georgia weather, clear skies, that heavy summer heat that makes everything shimmer. The Magnolia Grand looked magnificent. I'd actually restored that building myself back in 2008, brought back the original chandeliers, imported marble from the same Italian quarry they'd used in 1924. It was my crown jewel, my favorite property in the entire portfolio. But nobody knew that. Nobody except my accountant and my lawyer. I arrived early in my rented tux. It fit poorly. I'd insisted on the cheapest option, stayed in character. The lobby was already buzzing with early arrivals, florists making final adjustments, the wedding planner barking orders into her headset. I took the service elevator up to the bridal suite. Old habit. Naomi was surrounded by bridesmaids, a makeup artist, a hairstylist. She looked beautiful in that $14,000 dress. She also looked terrified. Daddy? She hugged me tight, and I felt her trembling. You nervous, baby girl? Is it normal to feel like you're making a huge mistake? I pulled back to look at her face. Naomi. No, I'm kidding. She laughed, but it sounded wrong. Forced, sort of. I don't know. Preston's been texting me all morning about details. The napkin colors are wrong. The florist brought the wrong shade of white roses. He's stressed. It's his wedding day, too, I said, though the words felt hollow. Right. That's what I keep telling myself. She grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing bridesmaid. Drank it fast. Too fast. He just wants everything perfect. I left her to finish getting ready and headed downstairs. The ballroom was stunning. Preston had demanded everything be white and gold. Hundreds of roses, thousands of candles, crystal everywhere. It looked expensive. It looked cold. Nothing like the backyard barbecue with string lights that Naomi had originally wanted. I found my seat and watched the guests arrive. Preston's side filled up quickly. Expensive suits, designer dresses, that particular confidence that comes from never worrying about money, or from pretending you never worry about money. My side was smaller. Naomi's teacher friends, my cousins from Decatur, a few neighbors from my building. They looked uncomfortable in the fancy setting, kept adjusting their ties and smoothing their dresses. Margaret Santos arrived just before the ceremony started. She's a business partner. We own several commercial properties together across the metro area. I'd invited her without mentioning whose wedding it was. When she saw me, her eyes went wide. Darius? I didn't know you'd be here. She looked around at the venue. Wait, whose wedding is this? My daughter's. Your? She grabbed my arm. Darius Washington. Why didn't you tell me? I would have brought a proper gift. I would have. You being here is gift enough, Margaret. She sat next to me, still looking shocked. Does she know? About the business? No. Darius, I have my reasons. The ceremony started. Naomi looked beautiful walking down that aisle on my arm. I tried not to cry. Failed completely. Preston waited at the altar in a custom tuxedo that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He looked handsome, confident. When Naomi reached him, he kissed her hand and whispered something that made her smile. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe he really loved her. Maybe everything would work out fine. The ceremony was traditional. Standard vows. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Preston dipped Naomi dramatically. Everyone applauded. I clapped too, ignoring the knot in my stomach. The reception started with cocktail hour in the adjoining salon. Open bar, exactly as Preston had demanded. I noticed he was drinking heavily. So was his father, Richard. I found a corner and watched. Watched Preston greeting guests, all smiles and charm. Watched him introduce Naomi to important people whose names she'd forget tomorrow. Watched him get louder, redder, drunker with each glass. Naomi found me eventually. Daddy, come meet Preston's line brothers. I followed her to a group of young men in expensive suits. They were already drunk, voices too loud, laughs too sharp. Fellas, this is my dad, Darius. They looked at me the way you look at the help. One of them, tall guy with a Morehouse class ring, extended his hand limply. Hey, man. Thanks for throwing this. Must have cost you everything you had, huh? He laughed. What did you say you do again? Preston mentioned something about maintenance work? Property maintenance, I said evenly. Right, cool. He'd already lost interest, turned back to his friends. Preston appeared, stumbling slightly. His eyes were glassy. Darius! There you are, man. He threw his arm around my shoulder, breath reeking of whiskey. I just want to thank you. for paying for all this. I know it was a stretch for you. It's my pleasure, son. No, seriously. He was slurring now, speaking loud enough for others to hear. You're a good man, humble, hardworking, the kind of values we need more of in this world, you know. He gestured broadly, making sure nearby guests could hear his magnanimity. Preston, maybe you should slow down on the drinks. I'm fine. It's my wedding day. I'm celebrating. He waved at a passing server. Another whiskey. Top shelf. Darius is paying. He laughed at his own joke. Dinner was served. 6 courses, each more elaborate than the last. I watched Preston get drunker. Watched him get louder. Watched Naomi's smile get tighter and tighter. Between the 4th and 5th courses, Preston stood up, clinked his glass with his fork, swayed slightly. I just want to say, he began, voice carrying across the ballroom. What a special day this is. Naomi. He laughed. Some guests laughed with him. Naomi stared at her plate. You're the most beautiful woman in the world. And Darius. He turned to me, raised his glass. Darius, you're a good man. A simple man. A hard-working man. You raised an incredible daughter on a maintenance worker's salary. That takes dedication. People laughed. I couldn't tell if it was with him or at me. So I want to promise you, Preston continued, that I'll take care of Naomi from here. You don't have to worry anymore. She's got the Whitmore family now. We'll make sure she wants for nothing. He drained his glass. She's moving up in the world. More applause. Naomi looked like she wanted to disappear. After dinner, the band started playing. Preston pulled Naomi onto the dance floor for their first dance. Then it was my turn. I held my daughter, tried to memorize everything about this moment. You okay? I asked quietly. Yeah, just tired. And Preston's really drunk. You want me to talk to him? No, it's fine. He's just excited. The song ended. I kissed her forehead and let her go, watched Preston pull her back toward his friends. Then came the cake cutting. The cake was wheeled out on a special cart 5 tiers of white fondant with gold leaf details, sugar flowers cascading down the sides. $6,500 worth of edible art. Naomi and Preston posed for photos. The photographer directed them through the traditional shots. Knife together. Big smiles. Look at each other. Feed each other a bite. Naomi did it gently. Preston did it playfully, smearing frosting on her nose. Everyone laughed and applauded. And Preston grabbed another glass of champagne. Drained it. His groomsman Jake was next to him, whispering something. Preston waved him off. I was standing nearby, about to head to the restroom. That's when Preston saw me. Hey, Darius. Come here, man. Something in his tone made me stop. Made me wary. You haven't had any cake yet, Preston said loudly. Half the room turned to look. Can't have that. You paid for it, right? All $6,500 of it. I'll get a slice in a bit, I said carefully. No. He grabbed a handful of cake. Actual fistful of it destroyed a whole tier. Naomi's eyes went wide. Preston, what are you? Your dad needs to taste his investment. He was slurring badly now. The room went quiet. 250 people watching. Son, don't call me son. He said it sharp, mean. You're not my father. You're just the maintenance man who scraped together his life savings to give his daughter one nice day. The silence was deafening. You could hear breathing, heartbeats, nothing else. Preston, please. Naomi reached for his arm. He shook her off. He walked toward me with that handful of cake. Here, old man. Try some dessert. I saw it coming. Had time to step back. Didn't. Sometimes you need to let people show exactly who they are. He smashed the cake into my face. Hard. Frosting went up my nose. In my eyes, down my collar. I heard gasps. Someone laughed nervously. I stood there, $6,500 cake dripping off me, while Preston turned to the crowd with his arms raised like he'd scored a touchdown. Come on. This is a celebration. Nobody moved. Nobody laughed. Naomi had both hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Preston turned back to me, swaying. What? You can't take a joke? What are you going to do, fire me? He laughed. You're a maintenance man. This, he gestured around the ballroom, is my world. You just paid the entry fee, buddy. He stepped closer. I could smell the whiskey on his breath. Try some dessert? Beggar. That word. Beggar. He said it loud enough for everyone to hear. Let it hang there in the air like smoke. I slowly wiped cake from my eyes. Looked at him. Really looked at him. At the expensive suit he'd charged to a maxed-out credit card. At the watch he'd borrowed from his father. At the fear hiding behind all that alcohol-fueled bravado. Preston, I started quietly. What? You gotta lecture me? Give me some wisdom about hard work and respect? He made quotation marks with his fingers. Save it. You're the help who got lucky enough to have a beautiful daughter. That's it. That's when I heard it from the back of the room. A voice I'd know anywhere. Dad? Everyone turned. My son Malcolm was pushing through the crowd in a suit, tie loosened, looking like he'd come straight from the airport. Malcolm, I said quietly. You came. Landed an hour ago. Came straight here. He stopped when he saw me covered in cake. His jaw clenched. What happened? It's nothing. Who are you? Preston interrupted. Malcolm ignored him. Dad, are you okay? I'm fine, son. Son? Preston laughed. How many kids you got, Darius? Naomi's friend Kaisha stood up from her table, pointing at Preston. That man assaulted Naomi's father. We all saw it. Assaulted? Preston scoffed. It's a wedding tradition. Lighten up. Malcolm pulled out his phone. Dad, I'm calling James. Don't. Who's James? Preston demanded. Malcolm was already dialing. James, it's Malcolm Washington. I'm at the Magnolia Grand. Can you come to the Grand Ballroom? Yeah, now. My father needs you. Preston looked at Naomi, confusion breaking through his drunken haze. Babe, who are these people? Naomi was pale, shaking. Daddy, you didn't tell him, did you? I shook my head slowly. A minute passed. The room stayed silent. Everyone watching, waiting, sensing something was about to break wide open. Then the ballroom doors opened. James Chun walked in, general manager of the Magnolia Grand, been working for me for 11 years. He saw me covered in cake, and his professional composure cracked. Mr. Washington. He rushed over. What happened? Are you all right? The room got even quieter. You could hear the air conditioning humming. Mr. Washington? Preston's voice went up an octave. No, this is Darius. Wait. He looked between us, his drunk brain trying to process. Wait. James was examining my face, trying to wipe cake off with his pocket square. Sir, should I call security? Security? Preston's voice cracked. For what? James turned to him, his expression ice cold. You assaulted the owner of this hotel, sir. I watched it hit him. Watched his face change, confusion, disbelief, understanding, horror. The owner? Yes. James's voice was crisp, professional. Mr. Darius Washington owns the Magnolia Grand, has for 16 years. I'm his general manager. He turned back to me. Sir, I apologize. I didn't realize there was a situation. How would you like me to handle this? Preston made a sound half laugh, half gasp. No, no, this is... He turned to Naomi. Naomi, your dad's a maintenance man. You told me he was a maintenance man. I told you he worked in property maintenance, Naomi whispered, mascara streaming down her face. He does, his properties. Margaret stood up from her table. Darius, darling, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize what was happening. You should have told me this was your daughter's wedding. She smiled at Naomi. Congratulations, sweetheart. Your father and I have been business partners for 18 years. Washington Property Group. We manage about $240 million in commercial real estate across the metro area. Preston grabbed the table. Actually grabbed it to stay standing. His father, Richard, turned gray. His mother, Claudia, looked like she might faint. The room exploded in whispers. I let them talk. Just stood there covered in $6,500 cake, watching Preston's world collapse around him. Finally, I spoke, quiet, but everyone heard. Preston, when you asked for my daughter's hand, I said yes. Not because I liked you, I didn't, but because Naomi loved you, and I respect her choices. Darius, I didn't know. I held up my hand. Cake dripped from my fingers onto the polished floor. I paid for this wedding. All $300,000 of it. More gasps rippled through the room. Richard Whitmore made a choking sound. Not because you deserved it. Because my daughter deserved one day where she felt special. Where she didn't worry about anything except being happy. Naomi sobbed into her hands. I wore simple clothes because that's who I am. I worked maintenance in my own buildings because I never wanted to forget where I started. I lived in a modest condo because a big house felt empty after my wife left. I wiped more cake from my face. You mistook humility for weakness. You mistook simplicity for poverty. You mistook my love for my daughter as something you could exploit. I was drunk. I didn't mean. You called me a beggar in front of 250 people. At my daughter's wedding. In my hotel. I was showing who you really are. James stepped forward. Mr. Washington, what would you like me to do? I looked at Preston. Really looked at him. Saw the expensive suit charged to a nearly maxed-out credit card. Saw the Rolex borrowed from his father. Saw the complete terror in his eyes. James, please refund the $45,000 venue deposit to my account. Wait, Preston started. The contract was in my name. I'm canceling it. You can't cancel a wedding that already happened. You're right. But I can revoke your booking for the honeymoon suite you planned to stay in tonight. I turned to James. Also cancel the Turks and Caicos trip. 2 weeks, all-inclusive resort. First-class flights. Everything under my name. Naomi gasped. Daddy, baby girl, I love you more than anything in this world. But this man needs to understand consequences. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app. Let's see. The venue, $45,000. The catering, $78,000. The flowers, $28,000. The band, $20,000. Your dress. Naomi, $14,000, though you wanted the $600 one from that boutique you loved. I looked at Preston. The cake that's currently all over my face? $6,500. One of his groomsmen muttered, Jesus Christ. The bar bill tonight will be around $38,000. I'll pay that people deserve to enjoy themselves. But the extra charges Preston added this morning. I scrolled through my emails. $7,000 in premium cigars for his groomsmen. $11,000 in Louis, the 13th cognac. Those he can pay for himself. Jake turned to Preston. Bro, you said your dad was covering. Shut up, Jake. I kept going. The band is still owed $600 final payment. Preston was supposed to handle that. I looked at James. Pay them from my account, then deduct it from the $2,500 Preston promised to contribute to the wedding planner. Tell her it's been reallocated. Preston went even paler. I don't have $2,500. The words hung there. His father stood up slowly. Son, you said you had savings. You said the firm. We don't have anything, Dad. Preston's voice cracked. The firm collapsed. We're broke. I'm drowning in debt. Everything's been a lie. Claudia actually fainted. 2 guests caught her, lowered her into a chair. Someone brought water. Preston turned to me, desperate. Look, I'm sorry. Okay? I messed up. I'll apologize properly. I'll make it right. You'll sign something first. I pulled folded papers from my jacket pocket. Post-nuptial agreement. You sign it, agreeing that in the event of divorce, you waive all claims to marital assets, including any inheritance Naomi might receive. You had this ready? Naomi whispered. Had my lawyer drafted 3 days ago. Just in case. I handed Preston a pen. Sign it, and if I don't, then I make 1 phone call, and every property management company I have relationships with, which is most of them in Atlanta, knows that Preston Whitmore III assaulted me at my daughter's wedding. You'll never work in real estate. Never lease office space. Never get your foot in any door in this city. His hand shook as he took the pen. You're blackmailing me. I'm protecting my daughter. He signed. Messy signature. Shaking hand. I folded the papers, put them back in my pocket. Then I turned to address the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize you had to witness this. The bar remains open. Dinner was excellent. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. I paused. Consider this a lesson from an old maintenance man about the difference between wealth and character, between what you show the world and who you really are. The applause started slow, then built. Standing ovation. 250 people clapping. Except the Whitmores, they were gathering Claudia, who'd woken up crying. Richard couldn't look at anyone. They left through the side door without a word. Preston stood there alone, his groomsmen having scattered like roaches when the lights come on. He looked at Naomi one final time. Naomi, please. Naomi took off her ring. Just slid it right off her finger. Placed it on the dessert table next to the destroyed cake. I don't think I want to be Mrs. Whitmore after all. You can't just, yes, I can. I'm 28 years old. Old enough to make my own mistakes. She walked over to me, hugged me tight, not caring about the cake on my tux. And old enough to fix them. I should have listened to you, Daddy. No, baby girl. You needed to see for yourself. That's how we learn. Malcolm joined us, and we stood there, my 2 children, my whole world. Over Naomi's shoulder, I watched Preston stumble toward the exit. Jake and the others followed at a distance. The last thing I heard him say was, "Somebody loan me cab fare." James approached carefully. "Mr. Washington, what would you like me to do about the suite reservations?" "Keep the family suite. My kids and I are ordering room service and watching movies." "Excellent choice, sir." Margaret appeared with napkins, helping me clean cake off my face. "Darius, you magnificent man. Why didn't you tell me this was going to be so entertaining?" "I was hoping it wouldn't be." We went upstairs to the family suite, biggest room in the hotel. City views on 3 sides. Naomi changed into sweats. I got out of my destroyed tux. Malcolm ordered half the room service menu. We sat on the huge sectional, ate burgers and wings, and talked about everything. Naomi wanted to know it all, how I started, what I was worth, why I kept it secret. I told her about growing up in old 4th Ward, about my mama cleaning houses, about buying that first building in College Park. "But you still work maintenance," she said. Someone needs to make sure the buildings run right. And it keeps me grounded. Reminds me where I came from. You're crazy, Malcolm said, but he was smiling. Your mother didn't think so. Mom's an idiot, Naomi said fiercely. You're the best man I know. We stayed up until 3 a.m. made plans for the annulment. Discussed Naomi's next steps. She wanted to keep teaching her kids needed her. I offered her a 2-bedroom condo in one of my buildings near her school. She accepted. 6 months later, Naomi's marriage was annulled. Preston had hidden debts totaling over $280,000. The annulment was granted on grounds of fraud. She moved into the condo, adopted a dog, kept teaching her 4th graders. Started dating a high school music teacher named Erin, who drove a Camry and knew from day one who her father was. Didn't care about the money. Just wanted to make her laugh. Preston's working sales at a used car lot in Marietta now, living with his parents. Claudia sent me a letter of apology 8 months after the wedding. I never responded. Richard filed for bankruptcy. Their investment firm had been insolvent for years. The $300,000 I spent on that wedding? People ask if I regret it. I don't. Not $1. Because Naomi needed to see who Preston really was. Better to learn at a wedding than after years of marriage and kids. I'm still working maintenance. Still driving my F-150. Still living in my 2-bedroom condo. Still wearing Costco jeans. People who meet me have no idea I'm worth $180 million. That's exactly how I want it. Because wealth isn't about what you show. It's about what you build, what you protect, who you love. And knowing that sometimes the best gift you can give your daughter is letting her make her own mistakes than being there when she's ready to fix them. Last week, Naomi brought Erin to meet me. Nice guy, teacher salary, drives that Camry, wore khakis and a polo. Nervous as hell. Mr. Washington, sir. It's an honor. Call me Darius. You want some sweet tea? We sat in my living room. Same secondhand sectional. Same old TV. Erin looked confused. This wasn't what he expected from Darius Washington's home. Sir, I just want you to know I care about Naomi. I know what happened with Preston. I'm not like that. I believed him. Could see it in his eyes. Welcome to the family, Erin. His relief was visible. They're talking about getting engaged next spring. Small ceremony this time. Backyard cookout. String lights. Line dancing on the grass. Exactly what Naomi wanted the first time. I'll pay for that too. Probably cost $4,000 instead of $300,000. And it'll be perfect. Because I learned something from that disaster 6 months ago. The most expensive lesson isn't the money you spend. It's watching your child get hurt and knowing you can't protect them from every mistake. But being there afterward, when they're picking up the pieces, that's worth everything. Preston texted Naomi last week. She blocked his number. I'm still just Darius. Still fixing leaky faucets. Still changing light bulbs. Still taking out trash. Just happens I own the buildings where I do it, and that $6,500 cake smashed in my face? Best investment I ever made. Because it showed 250 people, and more importantly, showed my daughter the difference between a man with money and a man with character. Sometimes they're the same person. Most times they're not. Thank you for being here and letting me share my story. If it touched you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment telling me what city and state you're watching from. I love knowing where you all are. If you want to support me even more, there's a donation link in the description. I share real-life stories like this every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular videos will appear on your screen. Choose whichever one calls to you. Until next time, remember, your story isn't over just because someone tried to write the ending without you.